It worked! It worked!
Hey.
There she is! Hello and welcome.
Thank you.
How are you this morning?
I'm nervous.
That's okay. We're going to calm that down. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our IG Live. We're just getting settled here. Our IG Live talk back for Nice Girl with director Natalie Camou. And I'm so happy to be here talking to Natalie. So let's everybody take a deep breath, because hi, Stony Moon Goddess. Let's take one more deep breath. Let's take one more. We're just here. We're going to talk about what we did, girl. So, wait 1 second. I have to pull up Natalie's bio, which is on my computer. And now I'm going to tell you about Natalie. Yes, I'm so prepared today. How's everybody doing? Everybody who's in the IG Live, how's your morning? What's up? Throw it in the chat. Hello. Let us know what you thought of the video. Okay, here we go. Natalie Camou, joining us today, is a Mexican-American writer and director based here in LA. She was recently hired to direct Changing the Chairs, a PSA for Audi, showcasing women in the director's chair. The piece opened Queen and Slim's world premiere at AFI Fest, hugely prestigious. During the summer of 2019, she shadowed director Tiffany Johnson and creator co-showrunner Lena Waithe on 20s. Natalie's autobiographical short Teresa won the inaugural Audi Fellowship for Women, a full tuition scholarship to attend AFI. That I did not know. That is amazing. Natalie's AFI thesis, Louise, premiered at the National Association of Independent Latino Producers Latino Media Fest, won Best Latinx Short at the Seattle Latino Film Festival, and continues to screen everywhere. That is Natalie Camou in a nutshell, but so much more. So, how are you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it's funny. I was looking over the questions of what you wanted to go over today, and I was refreshing myself on national and worldwide rape statistics, and I was just so baffled. And I think, one of the biggest components, or one of the biggest driving forces that I think you and I really grappled with was okay, you and I have independently in our lives, as we just met for the first time in 2019, experienced various pressures of how it, what it means to be a woman or a certain kind of woman, or shape-shifting ourselves to sort of meet standards that we felt didn't belong to us and that we weren't really interested in. And then you and I sharing so much on what it is to be raped and what it is to be sexually assaulted. And I am actually currently reading with my partner a book called South of Forgiveness, which is based on a true story. And it's about a woman who's raped who seeks reconciliation with her perpetrator. And they meet in person, and the perpetrator and she have both worked together to make the book in real life. And because one of the things that they discovered is that they didn't want to be hiding with this secret of her being someone who'd been raped and him being somebody who had raped somebody. And the only solution they could come up with was, well, why don't we just tell the world ourselves? Share with the world our story. And, my partner and I are finding it such a healing and incredibly just deep exploration of how he feels, what it is to be a man and certain experiences he's had, and for me, what it is to be a woman and the experiences of rape that I've had. And that worldwide statistic is that 1 in 3 women is raped worldwide. 99% of the perpetrators are men. And also the LGBTQ community, so much of the world is still closeted. So those statistics are high, but we can't even know what they are accurately because so many people aren't coming out, and they're terrified of coming out, and they're terrified of going a step further and reporting it. So I think
what's the name of the book for one of our watchers?
Yeah, it's called South of Forgiveness. Oh gosh, I heard the name of the author just like flew out of my head, but South of Forgiveness is the title of the book. Highly, highly recommend it. And you know, that was like the image, the reason why I'm going on this whole tangent here is because of the image that you selected for the banner, for the story about us talking today. You know, it's that image where you're completely off kilter, you're no longer vertical. And I was reminded of all the decisions because, you know, I think everybody who's here joining us, it's so important that you know that Ione and I and our beautiful team have been working on this video because of COVID, you know, and all of the complications of COVID. We've been working on this video for over a year, and there were many conversations because we had the time. In a way, we were, you know, spending 5 hours discussing, okay, how do we want to portray men in the film? How do we want to portray men in those moments of assault? And, you know, the importance of wanting to make sure that you, Ione, as our artist and as our portrayal representation of women or woman, were front and center and not giving screen time to the full embodiment of a man in those moments. And also making sure that, for instance, we just used hands and we used the device of a reflection. And I think for me that was so important because, you know, nothing is more vulnerable, nothing is more exposed than when you look at yourself in the mirror because you know where you've been. You know the experiences that you've endured, that you've had. You can't lie to yourself about those experiences. And there they are, imprinted in your eyes as you look back at yourself. And I think for me, in the music video, that particular scene and all of the conversations that we had about that, making sure that the hands were of multiple races, because this is a multi-ethnicity, multi-racial problem. Again, like worldwide, 1 in 3 women is raped and 99% of the perpetrators are men. And so it was so important to us to show that. And I think for me, what's still, like every time I watch the video, that moment I hold my breath because I can relate to it so much. And I was just, you know, in preparing for today, something that I was really, you know, I feel so honored and I feel so lucky because you and I were brought together. It wasn't like you chose, you know, it wasn't like I was your first choice to work on this video, and it was that you were meeting with me because of another person's recommendation. And so I was so scared in that first moment. I was like, oh, you know, maybe, you know, what if this isn't her ideal situation? Are we going to be able to work together? And in that initial work environment, it also felt like it took us time to feel safe with one another as collaborators. And I think, you know, in relationships, not just work relationships, that time of communicating and that time of building safety is like so important. And this video is really so much about that. It's like, how do I build safety for myself? How do I build safety within the context of this video to explore all of these crazy themes that have happened in my life? And like for me, I think it's so important, Ione, for you to share too, like the demands that you felt and that really inspired the visuals, especially for the intro of the film.
Yes, I will share. I thought we would get to that too, and I thought it was important too. Thank you for sharing all of that. When I first began making music as a musical artist and like launching myself onto the internet with my own image and my own music, and that was in 2015 really. But as a person who has been on stage a lot, you know, there is this push. Sorry for the leaf blower noise outside, but the door is open and I'm not closing it. There's this push to brand yourself. There's this push to create an image whenever you're in front of people. And for some reason, I got it in my head that I had to look a different way than I did, and that my body image or my physical presence in the world wasn't gonna cut it to reach my goals in the music industry. And I, in my early 20s, spent hours a week in the gym killing myself and exercising, essentially over exercising, not to the point where it's like a syndrome or a disorder, but to the point where, I mean, mentally, maybe it was a little bit, but not diagnosed really. More like I was pushing myself so hard that I injured myself in almost every joint of my body. And you could attribute that to being prone to injury, but I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and my like very intense pursuit of this body that is not natural for me, and this image that is really actually not attainable for me, maybe for other people. But that, I think, in what I've come to learn over time and over seeing the industry and seeing people embrace different ways of being, I've grown up in that regard, and I have come to embrace myself as I am, rather than having to like squeeze myself into some little box. And at first, I had told you this story because in the context, when you're a person who's around me and you work with me, you notice that like I'm in pain a lot, and I like come with my little like back heating pad around, and I'm like with my back pillow, and you know, and you start to notice, and I'll share that with people who I'm around. And so initially I didn't want to include this in the video, but I think, and Natalie, we had this discussion a lot as we were continuing to develop, and I was really hesitant, and it felt too personal. But then ultimately, at a certain point, you have to go like, my story is my story, and I have to own it, and like I can't skirt it. And you know, it's the same concept when it comes to like our experiences with sexual assault or harassment or rape. If you skirt that, you're not being authentic. And I'm grateful that you pushed me there, and we got there together, and that it can be really, I think the most effective way to create art is to have it be personal, but have it be universal too. And I can imagine that these kinds of pressures are just so felt by so many women, and I just wanted to address those pressures, those external pressures to look a certain way. And then we also got into addressing this other piece of my approach to feminism, and I think yours too, which is like resisting speaking about sexual assault. So that was long-winded.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think I do remember those conversations. I think before, for anyone who's interested in like the initial iterations of this project, the initial treatment that Ionie presented to me had a lot of things dealing with like plastic surgery or, you know, implants or things like this. And for me, I personally don't have implants. I didn't like explore it. It was definitely a pressure that I felt. Like I remember how even with a family member, a very close family member, feeling the pressure of being told I should get breast implants, I should get a butt implant because I needed that in order to
my God.
Like
I did not know
romantic
that.
partner in the future. And you know, as a teenager, I think I was like 16 at the time. And I'm still flat chested. Like, you know, I was told my breasts would come in at some point, but they still haven't come. And I remember being like, you know, but those things will come in time. Like, I shouldn't be feeling this pressure to like get breast implants right now. Like, I just trust that I'm not particularly religious, but you know, there are those moments where I'm like, I just trust that like God is going to give me the gifts that I need. And that took, I remember that being a really difficult conversation for me to have with that family member, because I really respected and esteemed that family member. And I was also very insecure. I mean, what 16-year-old girl like isn't incredibly insecure? But I think for me, when we were talking about plastic surgery in that kind of commercial image way, I felt like it wasn't authentic to our experiences. And I think for me, that was, you know, I was a question that I've been getting, which is great in response to this video, is like, wow, how did you keep track of all the details? How did you make all of these decisions? And, you know, all of those things. And my nature is very detail oriented.
And mine too.
Yeah, and our team, the team that we hired around us, Caru de Jesus, who was our production designer, Celine Layous, who was our director of photography, both of these powerhouse women are incredibly detail-oriented and really connected and anchored in theme. And I think overall, what was so important to us to communicate is a story that is completely anchored in our own personal experiences. And when Ionie shared this story with me about killing herself at the gym in order to achieve this certain image, I was like, oh my God, why are we not using that? This needs to be the opening image. This needs to be the first, because in many ways, this entire song, and that was the thing, it's like, as a director, for me, it's so important to start, and every director is totally different. For me, it's important to start with a list of questions, like, why are you making this song? What place are you inspired? Like, what is the thing that you're really trying to communicate with this? And for Ionie, it was so much. And this is actually where Ionie and I departed a little bit, because for me, I'm not so much an eye for an eye. Like, when I think of how my feminism or my ideas of equality in genders, how that manifests itself, I'm not thinking, okay, in order to achieve equality, we need to now make all men experience what we have experienced and discriminate against them and prioritize women only. I think for me, I find that as like a counter, and that's me personally. There is such a huge spectrum of feminism obviously out there. For me, I have struggled a little bit because I don't necessarily subscribe to that thought. I think it's very counterproductive. I feel that what's necessary is understanding, is empathy. I think that an empathy and acknowledgement of what we like are for our male, and again, for new viewers, one of the huge motivators here is that the rape rate is so high. It is 1 in 3 women worldwide, and 99% of perpetrators are men. And that kind of mentality affects our culture. It affects our hiring practices. It affects how we pay people. It affects our family, our nucleus, everything. It affects everything. And for when Ionie and I were working together on this, it felt so important to really like be honest and true to how she and I had personally experienced this. And I'm so grateful that you were able to go there with me. I'm so grateful that you were willing and open to go there with me.
Same. There was a lot of that. And I did want to say, I don't think we depart on the eye for an eye. Just to clarify, I feel that I think the song was written in a moment of vindication, and I think that threw us. Like, the opening line of the song through us for a long time. Hi, Azariah. But Azariah is a fantastic DP joining us. So, yeah, it was written in a moment of vindication, but like typically I don't want revenge. I want the same thing you want. I want understanding. I'm not in the context of feminism. I'm not a man hater, and I think that's counterproductive too. I think we have conversations like this. We make art like this, and a lot of people are doing this. We're not the only ones, obviously, and I think that's the power of making art. I'd like these comments to go down. They're distracting me. Okay, I can't. That's the power of making art, and that's when I approach something like this, and I think when you do too, like it brings up so many conversations, and I have these kinds of conversations with men all the time about what it's like, and like I also need to have conversations with people of color about what it's like all the time, and these are the conversations that just need to keep happening so that we can all find empathy within ourselves to behave differently in the world, right? And these pieces bring out conversations in people, I hope, and I think that's been my greatest like joy and pride in this work. Are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You were so still. I thought you were frozen. That's my greatest pride and joy in this work has been people going, whoa, that was such a subject matter to approach. And you guys did it, you ladies did it with color and humor, and it hit home, and people know what it's about. But it's also not like, it's not depressing, it's not like a downer. And I'm so glad we were able to achieve that, because I think that, that's why comedy is effective. That's why stand-up is effective. Like, there has to be this balance. But anyways, What else?
Yeah, I've been getting that feedback a lot too. And I'm just like, wow, you guys did this in such a funny, like, of such a heavy topic. You did it in a really lighthearted way that I'm able to understand and access. And it was so great when you sent me that one comment of like somebody needing to stop the video just for a moment to breathe. And it's great because this was what we were grappling with this entire year working on this project. You know, the hours-long conversations. Is this too heavy-handed? Is this too vague? Is this specific enough? Is this hard-hitting enough? Like, did we earn this moment, the moment of the hands, you know, touching you in the center of it? Did we earn that? Did we build up to it? And again, like, when the camera is chasing you, following you, persisting, insisting on having you, again, that was really anchored in and this was again like you allowing me to access your own personal experience of like, you know, what are the stages here that you experience? And obviously I can completely relate to them and have experienced it myself as well, but I think for me, you as the songwriter, you as the champion of this piece, it was so important to me to have it be really true and honest to your own personal experiences of trauma. And, you know, as the camera is following you, and it was interesting for me, and it was really cathartic for me in a way to make this piece with you, because it was like, I am, as the person behind the camera in the POV of the perpetrator, if you will, like, wow. Wow. Like I never thought of myself as being able to have access to that POV. And it's, you know, and it's just so crazy to me. And again, it comes back so much to culture and society. Like I've had this recent experience of sexual assault and like prison time, like as a concept being what in society is deemed as the appropriate response, you know? And it's like, yeah, but when I look at prison as an institution or like as its ability to even solve this very complicated problem, it doesn't. It actually makes the problem worse. And those people who come out of prison, the statistics don't really. Hi, that's my cat saying hello.
Wow, that was quite a long hello. Lila's right here at my feet, being very quiet and good.
You know, I don't know. It was so much like being a woman behind that POV of the perpetrator. I was able to see like, wow, me as a woman, it is so obvious to me, it's so clear to me, the signs of no. Yeah. What no looks like in the body, maybe not on the tongue, you know, maybe the word no, especially in different cultures, polite cultures especially, it's really difficult to say no. I feel like me personally, yes, as a child, I was said no to a lot, but was I taught how to say no? I don't think I was. I don't think I was taught how to create boundaries. I think that was something that was definitely missed in my education as a child, as a woman, as a little girl. I didn't get those lessons. And here I am again as the director behind the camera, as the camera is simulating the POV of the perpetrator following you, you know, chasing after you in a way. And it's like, wow, this is the education. This is the education that needs to happen. And I was doing this research today nationally in the United States of the sexual assault education that's out there in high schools. Only 8% of it is targeting men, essentially, the male perspective, like really treating it as men needing to be the ones who learn these boundaries, how to navigate those boundaries, how no can manifest in the body versus just in language. And I thought that was, again, because 99% of perpetrators are men, I thought that was really interesting to read that in the Department of Defense website. I was like, oh, that's interesting, you know. And, you know, it is a really great question to ask educators and to ask professionals, like, what does that education look like? Should it be more targeted toward men? Should it not be? You know, also the education for women and boundaries. Does that exist? I didn't look up that statistic, and I wonder what it looks like and if it exists.
Yeah, I think this is something that I brought up in the blog that I sent you, that it's this combination of like, I think when I came into thinking about feminism more consciously and conscientiously, I was horrified at the idea that it was on me, that the boundaries setting was on me, and that the burden, I have always felt that the burden of setting boundaries has been on women. And that, I think, is where most of my internal struggle and my resentment, if I had some, comes from. In my resentment with society, like, and I think men are waking up to this, that, you know, especially like the generation below, younger than us, not below us, this idea of like consent is being taken a lot more seriously. But I think the education needs to go both ways. We all need to take personal responsibility for ourselves and our own actions and our own behavior. And
yeah, I can relate to that resentment. I was thinking, and this was also a theme that was brought up in that book, South of Forgiveness. It's like, you know, every day we go to when we go to the airport, when we travel internationally, which is happening less right now because of COVID, but when we do, we take off our shoes, we empty our water bottles. And that's for a crime that is like a percentage, like the percentage of times that you find that a plane is hijacked are so low when you compare it to the amount of women who are violated in this country and worldwide. Yeah. And yet there's nothing really being done in that preventative kind of way. Like, what are we doing to prevent these crimes? And I think it makes a lot of sense that resentment would be part of our experience, especially because it does feel, I mean, I remember too, like the fresher an assault is, the more vulnerable I remember feeling, and the more I would literally cover up, like from head to toe. I wouldn't wear makeup. I got rid of all my heels. I didn't want to be able to be blamed for having invited that kind of attention. And I think, you know, that is something that right now I can look back on and be like, wow, like that I felt so alone on that journey. And yes, there are services and there are great organizations and nonprofits out there. And like right now, they're just so backlogged. You know, they're completely at capacity to being able to help people. It's like during COVID, there's a huge surge of these types of domestic violence crimes happening. Huge surge.
I think the idea of desexualizing yourself to protect yourself, I relate to that a lot. And I think it's tied into this other aspect of how I cope, I guess. You know, sort of like rejecting all of these things that society puts on us because society wants us to sexualize ourselves too, because then we'll be more desirable. But then I had this conversation with a friend who is working in film as well and is a woman, and she kind of said to me, you can desexualize yourself all you want, like someone's still gonna find a way to sexualize you. And it's really evident in like what we've seen with Billie Eilish, for example, or what we've seen with Adele in the context of body image and how the music industry has pressured her and women in general. And this is not, again, to say that like men don't experience these pressures. I do want to just body image pressures placed on men. Do I have you still? Okay.
Yeah. Right.
And this is a conversation, it's a different conversation. You know, I like to come at things that I can speak from personal experience about. I can't come here and talk openly about what it's like to be a man feeling body image pressures from society. I know they exist. Want to definitely acknowledge that because it doesn't go unnoticed from my part, at least. But back to the concept of Billie Eilish, like Billie Eilish, I've seen her talk about it. I think if you've seen the documentary, or I don't know where I've seen her talk about it, whether it's the documentary or other places, but she felt this need to cover herself. And I have felt that need before too. And as you said, you have too. And it doesn't matter. Someone's going to have something to say one way or another. So I think ultimately I've realized that in these conversations, I've realized like at a certain point, you've got to release everybody else's conversation or thoughts or perceptions of you because you can't control it all. I can't control other people's perceptions of me. I can only do what feeds my soul and what makes me comfortable today in this moment. Tomorrow might be a different thing. Okay, just for today. This is me right now, you know? So, anyways, anything else on that, or shall we move to something a little bit more relating to directing?
Yeah, we can move on. Let's move on.
I think I was really curious to ask you about sort of like how you are such an extremely detail-oriented person and so committed to story. And that, you know, I think that there are times when I try to be more broad strokes because I get like overwhelmed with details and I'm just like, I just want to shoot it. Can we not think about this right now? And so I was curious, how did I word this? How do you zoom in on such fantastic details while maintaining a bird's eye view? Tell us a bit about your process as a director.
Yeah, I think for me, this was something I kind of touched on earlier. It was like, all of the details, it's really about intention. Like, you know, once I was able to dial into the place that you were making this music video from, which I don't know if you want to share.
I feel like I did
at some point. But like,
did I miss something?
No, I think you did already. But yeah, so for me, it was so important to dial into that place that you were making this music video from. And then as soon as we're working in a scene, as soon as we're working with a beat, like an acting beat for you, or a camera movement question from Celine, or a production design question from Karla, like for me, it's so much, okay, well, we decided that this scene is about this. We decided that it's important in this realm of the story. So, and that's really where I'm able to make my decisions really quickly and pay attention. Yeah. It almost feels like cooking from a recipe. You know what I mean? Like once you've cooked enough, you're like, okay, I know that I need to simmer the onions first and foremost. Wait till they're transparent. Then I can add the garlic. So I don't want the garlic to burn, but I do want the flavor of the garlic. You know, it's very much in that way. And it's like, for me, making sure that everything is pretty much set and ready to go before you arrive, because, you know, being so aware of that vulnerable place that you're going to be reaching into in order to communicate the scene and carry the scene in your expressions and in your emotions, and to try my best as a director to have this you know, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's somebody yelling because something's falling and it's like, oh no. Ionie, just you and me, and like creating this kind of invisible energy bubble that you and I can exist in. And again, it's like communication. Like you and I got to a place where we're communicating so much that, you know, we could kind of talk with each other's eyes, or talk with a gesture, or I could come and whisper in your ear if you needed that.
On set with a mask on, you have to talk with eyes.
Yeah,
you're like,
so true. Yeah.
Oh my god! On set with masks is the worst. I've literally not been on a set without masks ever. No, that's not true. Anyways, horrible.
But yeah, I think for me, to answer your question, like keeping track of details, it is so much about dialing into what the intention of that scene is. And then and again, like it's all honestly done before the day that we're there. It's all in the pre-production questions, me having conversations with the art director and with Karla, like, okay, this prop means this. Like really, you know, really putting in the emotions that each prop represents. And that really is so important, because then it allows you to very quickly, for me on the day, do an emotional inventory, if you will, of like all of the little ingredients that are creating this particular emotion for that scene.
Yeah.
And then if something's missing, I can feel it, because it feels... You can just obviously feel it in the way that you feel like salt is missing when you taste a dish that you're cooking, you know?
Yeah, you have, and I tuned into this too for myself, or I think that any artist, and yeah, I think any person making art, whether it's me when I'm at the piano writing a song, you know, alone, or us when we're collaborating, or you as director on set, day of set, going like, did we get it, you know? It's all about, for me, and I think for you, because I've watched you do it, like tuning into the instinct and your gut and saying, is this it? Have we gotten it? And for me, I think what I've learned and tried to dial most into is that internal gut and that internal compass telling me like this is the direction and this feels right. And I guess I just want to take a moment to like encourage that in our listeners and our viewers, because it's so hard to seek external validation, and it's great to get feedback from people whose opinions and feedback you trust. But sometimes like you just have to like go inside and ask yourself, is this right for me? Is this the direction? Is this the take? Is this the whatever? And so I've watched you do that, and it's awesome to see you know in yourself, you know, that this is it or not.
Yeah, it's like, you know, everybody has that little voice inside of them, I feel like. And in life, like outside of work or outside of relationships in life, when you're like, oh, I shouldn't have, I was just talking about this with my roommate the other day, like I should avoid highways today. Like sometimes you get in the car and you're like, you know what? I'm just having a feeling like I should avoid highways today. And listening to that voice. And I think with directing and with content creation as artists, like when we're working on our stuff, I know for me, and I think I feel very privileged that I can say that all the projects that I'm working on right now honor why I think I'm here on earth. Like all the projects that I'm working on right now are yes from my soul, like on a soul level, to the kind of work I want to be creating on this planet. And
that's amazing.
When I'm working from that place, it's like, you know, it's like tuning into that little voice inside of me, that intuition, that compass, and seeing if it believes yes. Like sometimes I'll ask it, like, do we have it? Like, and I'll replay it in my mind outside, because, you know, sometimes there can be a noise or sometimes there can be a distraction in the middle of it, and just like being able to replay it in my mind and trust, yes, we have it. No, we don't have it. This was off, that was off. And it's insane to me sometimes, like I remember one take, there's like 27 things that are off. And I was like, whoa, that my brain can just like, but I think we all have that. It's just, you know, why is it off? And then you just start going off of the laundry as instantaneous, and then within 5 minutes you're up again and you're doing the next take.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on and what stories you're looking forward to telling in the future.
Yeah, sure. I'm working on a number of things right now. I'm going to be making my first feature this spring, Boom, and it's inspired by my upbringing, and it really takes a look at Chicano life. And I think for me, something I grew up loving all of the Chicano staples like La Bamba, Celine, Real Women Have Curves, Blood In, Blood Out. Like, you know, like there's so many Chicano staples that for me was like, wow. Like, you know, you hear lines come out of characters' mouths and you're like, yes, that is my life experience. That is what I feel. Like, I remember in Real Women Have Curves when America Ferrera's mom is like telling her about her sacrifice. They're like, she's chasing her down a street in downtown, through the fashion district in downtown LA. And she's like, the things I've sacrificed for you. And she's saying it in Spanish. And America Ferrera's character like stops. And it's like, yes, I have been there. Oh my gosh, have I been there? Like, and you know, it is so important to have film and content made about your existence. And I feel like for me, making Zaza Boom, I'm so excited to bring, I think will be a little bit of a grittier, more raw experience, because, you know, my own upbringing was a little rough. You know, it also had lots of gems of joy and happiness, and it was also a little rough. So like and I think a lot of Chicano childhoods are a little rough, and I want to be able to portray that, and I hope create again another safe space for healing and catharsis. I'm also working on a television series that will be for streaming content, writing and producing, that it's about the Mayans.
Cool.
Exciting, because I think for me there are huge misconceptions about Mayan civilization. Like I think traditionally we think of Mesoamerican Indians as being much less advanced in technology than we think of Europe at the same time period. And, you know, it's really important to me to remind anyone who's listening that Mayans came up with the concept of zero way before anybody else did. They also had cities that were in the millions larger than any other city was at the time. And an incredible sophistication. They created corn. Like nobody, that's like genetic modification right there of food. And they did it like before that was a thing. Yeah, I mean, it's like you could read books. Like,
wait, how did they create corn? This is mind blowing.
It's honestly kind of a complicated thing, but it's like they were able to it's the same thing where you combine foods, like you can remove certain parts of a plant when it's in a certain growth period and connect it with another plant at that certain growth period, and then you're able to create hybrid vegetables, you know.
So
like
they were breeding corn.
Because corn doesn't automatically create itself. It needs the help of man in order to seminate. But it's really interesting.
Oh my goodness, we modified from the beginning of time. That's nuts.
But also the idea of having like water, like clean water in the city, that was also something that they were doing and fully capable of. And I think, you know, never before have I personally seen the Mayan civilization portrayed in a way that we look at Greeks and Romans, for instance, in media. Yeah. And I'm really excited to be a part of a project that does that brings the light of honor and prestige to a civilization that is so often depicted as bloodthirsty and savage. Like,
yeah,
it's about time. I'm also working. I'm really excited. Yeah. I'm also working on a documentary about the inventor of the radio, Guglielmo Marconi. And we're going to be going to Italy in January to begin production on the ground in Rome and Bologna, beginning interviews and content like that. That'll probably be like a 5-year project we're anticipating. Wow. So, yeah, and I just got approached for another feature, and, you know, there's like things bubbling, and it's very exciting. I feel very excited and thrilled and so gracious and happy to be a creative right now in my life. You know, it's such a long journey to being at this moment, and I'm very much aware. Like like this reminder of when you look in the mirror, you can't deny yourself the trials and tribulations that you've experienced up into that moment. They're there, they're in your eyes, undeniably so. And, you know, it's very, you know, it's been like a long journey. It's like, 10 years. It's been 10 years of getting to this place, you know, tons of income insecurity, moments where I was literally like, I forget, dumpster diving. Yeah, I was like literally dumpster diving. And you know, I was living in a city where that was like a thing. Here in LA, I don't even know what the dumpster diving culture is. But like, thank God on the East Coast, it's more of a thing. I think here they lock the dumpsters. But anyway.
Wow.
So yeah, like definitely, I feel like I'm so happy to be where I am right now.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you that these opportunities are blossoming.
Yeah, I want you to share too. You've got some exciting things in the mix. What's up next for you?
I have a whole album coming out. I'm hoping to make a couple more visual music films, shall we say? We don't call it a music video, it's a music film now. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, I've got a 13-track album coming out, and I'm looking forward to making a video for a song that I wrote called Huerita, which I told you about it. It's my take on, you know, togetherness, and hoping that I can continue to make also art and visuals that bring people together and start conversations and foster understanding. That's really all that I care about and all that I want to do. I also have another project. It's a duo where I write exclusively in Spanish. For those of you watching who don't know, I don't call myself Mexican American, strangely, because I don't think I identify as an American. It's just like, yes, I live here. My mom is from Mexico City, and she's a Mexican Jew, so I have an unusual combination of heritage and ethnicity and things. So I speak Spanish and I write music in Spanish. And so I've got this other project right now it's called Sans Toi. Why is the name in French? I don't know. Has nothing to do with it. So that will be coming out soon too, and I'm really excited because it's completely different than what I'm doing here on this channel, which is great because I got range. It's good to have range. Let's see. Is there anything else? I did want to ask about, I wanted to ask about your experience. Well, first of all, is there anything else you wanted to get to?
There was something that thank you, Adrian. Wild corn isn't edible. It's very true.
Oh my gosh.
There was something that you had raised about RBG that I thought maybe was interesting for us to explore a little bit. RBG being an imperfect advocate because of her positions on race and racial inequities being, I think that is something, the idea of the perfect advocate, I think is something that our generation is, and you know what? It's amazing that we are, as a generation, bringing this up to light because it is important to have people who live and practice by their ethics, especially the ethics of the not perpetrating, but like putting out there into media and asking for others to follow them as an example in. I think it's also like, you might have somebody who's an incredible advocate for one issue and they're not a great advocate for other issues.
Yeah. And just to clarify what Natalie's talking about, she and I had this conversation about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who criticized the football players who, during the time of rioting last year, or was it when was this actually? When did she die? Last year, no? Yeah, because we wanted to.
2016, or was it?
No, it was she died while we were in production for the video, and that's why I wanted to include her. But after we shot that, I found out that she heavily criticized the football players who were taking a knee regularly during the national anthem because of the many murders of Black men that have gone on in this country over and over and over and over again. And they were resisting and, showing their support for the movement. And she criticized them and said it wasn't, I think she said something like it wasn't patriotic. Obviously, it's not patriotic because why would you be patriotic in a country that is killing your people? So we wanted to address that. That's what we're talking about, just for anybody who didn't know.
Yeah, it was, the thing was that we were nervous in a way to include RBG in the video because of her controversial stances on race. And that was where, Ionie and I did a deeper dive because it's like, Polly Murray, for instance, who's like an incredible advocate of her time and in many ways was like the Rosa Parks of the 1940s when Rosa Parks didn't do what she did until the 1960s. and nobody really ever touted Polly Murray's name, and she is an African American, and she went abroad to Africa, she taught in Ghana, she came back to the States, and she was a huge civil rights activist, and yet became alienated in her own movement because of some of her beliefs, which kids of her time when she was getting older would say were outdated in their minds. For instance, her belief that the name that gave her pride to use was Negro with the capital N. That was something that was hugely controversial for the civil rights movement of the 60s and 70s, for her to be having that stance and that belief system. And I think for me, though, that doesn't invalidate all of the good work that Polly Murray did to, RBG actually quoted and highly gave, homage to Polly Murray's work, because had it not been for incredible things that she had done as a student on things about sexism, on things about discriminating on the basis of sex, RBG really wouldn't have had all of the legs and the resources that she had to be able to craft her argument in the way that she did, to really create, discrimination on the basis of sex being illegal for all of us lovely ladies who are being prevented from being able to work and being able to earn the same amount of wages as our male counterparts. So I think for me, it is important for us to say we don't agree with all of RBG's stances. However, her mark on women's rights is like irrefutably some of the most powerful work that's ever been done for women's rights. So I think for us, and also the idea that there is a line there is a line of justice. There is a line of litigation that is in our minds, at least in my mind as a woman, that I would hope would be there for me to be able to find protection behind. And that in some ways with the Me Too movement, we are further establishing the nuances of what that judicial line looks like. And it felt important in the bridge of the song to be able to have this version, this, to be able to call out to a societal behemoth of an entity, of an icon that stands for a line to be drawn, this is the line, this is what exists. And in some ways we're reappropriating her image and making her even a little bit more than maybe she was in real life.
More what?
I think like a little more edgy, especially with regard to consent and the Me Too movement.
Good.
Yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to cover? I don't know what time it is.
We can wrap it up. I think I wanted to ask one more thing about sort of like your experience being a female director in the film industry generally, and how you see the film industry just baby steps of shifting toward more like representation on the whole and more opportunities for the stories that are being told, as well as like who's telling them and what kind of people are occupying more key positions in the film industry and things like that. If you want to share a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, I was just trying to find, because I think it was recently updated. I think the last time I looked, it was like 4% of directors are women.
Wow, that's nuts.
I think it might have changed though recently. So, and then they have different statistics. So, like I'm just looking up on Variety, an article that was published in 2021. Women represented 16% of directors working on the 100th highest grossing films in 2020.
Wow.
And so it was 12% in 2019 and it was 4% in 2018. So, that's huge. Like, it has literally quadrupled in the last 2 years. So, like,
wow.
In many ways, you can say we're definitely on the right course. I think, this was something that I was thinking about this morning. It's like, is my ideal that you hire me because I'm a woman, or is it that you don't use me being a woman as the reason you're not hiring me? Yeah. And I think it's more the latter, but obviously unconscious bias is very prevalent, and people don't even, like, some people don't even know what unconscious bias is. And yet they're exercising it in their hiring practices, and they're exercising it in the salaries or the rates that they agree to pay when hiring women. And I think for me, it's like asking yourself, it's always that thing where, like, in jobs.
Sorry to interrupt you, Natalie. Instagram is telling me I have 1 minute and 47 seconds remaining. I didn't know there was a time limit. So.
That makes sense. We did get on about an hour ago. So I guess, for me, I hope, it's getting so much better. And again, like, I think for me, it's not so much that I want to be hired because I'm a woman. It's that I don't want to not be hired because I'm a woman. So being really met as... being given the opportunity to pitch myself in a way that is bias-free is the ideal, I think, for me. And it's important to hear stories from all perspectives. I think that is undeniably the case. We are enriched as a society with the more perspectives that we hear from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, with 49 seconds remaining, I just want to thank you so much for joining me to chat about Nice Girl music video, and I want to thank you for your incredible work on the video and for being you. And thank you everybody for joining, and I will be reposting this so that y'all can see it. Hopefully it was elucidating conversation. Thank you, love. Thanks everybody.